This is Morally Sound, and I'm your host, Sean Wang. Today I'll be interviewing Mrs. Allison Brunhouse and Mrs. Samantha Schifano. I first met Mrs. Brunhouse when I applied to Pingree, and she was my interviewer. She's also been one of my advisors for the past 4 years. Could you start with your name, when you graduated Pingree, what you're doing right now, and anything else that you do at Pingree?
Of course. So my name is Allison Brunhouse. I graduated from Pingree in 2000. I'm currently the Director of Admission and Enrollment. Within that, I also have responsibility in that I oversee communications, and I am an advisor as well, and I currently am advising 8 amazing seniors who I've been with since they were freshmen, and they are my 3rd group of advisees.
Fun fact, I'm one of those advisees.
Yes, Sean is, and I met Sean when he was in 8th grade when he was applying to Pingree.
Yeah, she was my interviewer. What was the honor code like when you attended Pingree?
So it was the same code as it is today. And, very similar, I think. However, I don't think I valued or fully appreciated the honor code until I left Pingree, because that's when I realized how special it was, because I got to see in a sad and disappointing way that everybody else doesn't follow those same set of rules. So while I valued it during my time here, I signed every test, quiz, exam, paper with I have neither given nor received any unauthorized aid on this insert assignment. And I appreciated leaving my backpack and wherever I needed, but it didn't really have the same meaning until I left this place.
Were there things different with things like convocation or graduation or other major events?
Yeah, so convocation is the one that's the biggest one to me. And in the fall of 2007, when I started work at Pingree, I remember clearly it was, my 3rd week of working and being back on campus. And that was the first convocation that began this new tradition of students signing the honor pledge with their advisory groups and bringing it to the stage to hand to the honor board chair and the student body president. And Jessica, who had started that, I remember sitting on stage as a staff member and being so proud that a student was making a ceremony that's always been so important to the start of the school even better. And, I had come back kind of unexpectedly, and I remember it very clearly in that moment, just watching this happen, and remembering why this place really is so special. So that's the biggest one. Graduation, I think, has really stayed true to itself from when I graduated, except I graduated outdoors on an extraordinarily hot day because Hauser Auditorium was not air conditioned. So that was the only main difference, that grandparents were passing out during the graduation, and there were it was a hot graduation.
How is Pingree as a school environment compared back then to now?
So I think in the most obvious way, it's a more diverse community. Technology plays a much more obvious role in classrooms and in student life. So those are the 2 things that I think come right to mind, both in positive, wonderful ways. The schedule is also completely different. And I think again, it's a great change because the pace was frenzied, and I think expecting students to continue to go through 6 or 7 academic classes was unrealistic. And so I love the new schedule. There's obviously a new middle school here now, the new athletic center. And, I think it's easy to think back and not necessarily, and think differently about the time than you're here. But I don't think I would have been admitted now. I mean, I think the students here are just so curious and extraordinary and just amazing in the most positive way. But so I think it's just a better version of the place that I went to high school.
How do you see the honor code fitting in part of the admissions process?
So I think it's huge because I think it differentiates us as a unique place, right? And I say that authentically because I think that the honor code is not just something that we talk about. It's something we live by. It's something you can see. I think you can feel it, but maybe that's just me. So I think we talk about it because we don't want people to just sign on for it. We want them to believe in it, to support it, and to really buy into it. So it's important that we speak about it because we don't want people joining our community who are going to turn their back on it or not follow it, kind of intentionally.
Yeah.
But I think it also makes us who we are, right? And so I think I'm so proud that it's still a vibrant part of our community. And I can't imagine Pingree without the honor code.
Have you ever felt, either as your time as a student or as a faculty member, that your belief in the honor code has been tested, or that the honor code itself has been tested by the community?
So in my first year here, I was working in a different physical office, but in the same space. And I had left my BlackBerry at the time, not my iPhone, on my desk. And it was on my desk, and I left for 10 minutes. And when I returned, it was not there. And it was not misplaced. It had been stolen. And I can't say that I lost faith in the honor code, but it reminded me how one individual, and in this case I'm assuming it was one individual, can ruin it for everyone. And I didn't allow that experience to change my behaviors, so I didn't start locking up my belongings or locking my office when I left. But it was sad and it was disappointing. And that was I think, only time that it just reinforced how one person does matter, right? If one person behaves badly, it impacts everyone. And so it just reminded me of that truth.
Conversely, what are some shining moments that you've seen with the honor code?
So I think conversely, I think the very fact that I walk in every day and I leave my purse with my wallet, with my car keys, with who knows what else is in my bag. And I don't think twice about it. I really, truly don't. I don't behave that way in any other area of my life. In my home, I lock my doors, right? So I think that pure fact is different and extraordinary. I think the respect, the thing that always has impressed me the most about the honor code is I do think that it translates to how we treat each other. We may not be best friends with each other, but we respect and we are kind to each other. And I think I've seen that, and I talk about it, I've seen that in our advisory group because we have 8 kids who are very different, who might not, gather at the lunch table or outside of school. But you are 8 kids that gather every Thursday, used to be Tuesday, and you're so supportive, you're so encouraging, and it's genuine. It's not 30 minutes of fakeness, right? Yeah. And I believe, maybe someone would challenge me, but I believe that happens through the honor code. that you rise to the occasion, and you don't think you're doing somebody a favor. That's just how you are. And so it also means to me that I think Pingree students are exceptional communicators. In most cases, they graduate and they're able to look adults in the eye. They're doing the right thing even when no one's looking. And I think that is the best thing we do when we send kids out into the real world, because the more people that can behave like that, the better this world will be.
How do you think Pingree prepared you for when you entered college, and what was the transition like?
So I went to Hamilton College, which is a small liberal arts school in upstate New York, literally in the middle of nowhere. Fun fact, Mr. Burkhart and I were in the same graduating class at Hamilton. And I felt so prepared. I think some of this I knew in that freshman year, and some of it more comes from looking back. Academically, when I was asked to write a 10-page paper, I might have taken a deep breath, but I was able to sit down and open my computer and not stare at a blank screen for 12 hours. And some of my roommates and some of the people on my floor could not say the same thing. It's interesting. So my freshman year of college, I lived with 3 other girls in a dorm that was freshmen through seniors. And I was originally inclined to leave our door open, and then I realized that was not smart. And that happened because one of my roommates had something stolen from her within the first week of school. But Hamilton also has an honor code, but it's an academic code. It's not a social code. And so there was a difference there. So I felt kind of prepared that I would be, I was a different, and I'm sure there were other people like me, right? But that I held a different moral and ethical compass, I think, than at least some people, because we were robbed that first week. And then I was also the chair of Hamilton's honor board my senior year. So I was a member of their honor board, I believe, sophomore, junior, senior year. I can't remember. I don't think I did it freshman year. And I don't think I would have been interested in that opportunity had I not attended Pingree. And interestingly, I had wanted to, or I had applied to be on the honor board when I was a Pingree student. And I'd asked Mrs. O'Mara to write my teacher recommendation. And she told me at the end of swim practice that she appreciated that I wanted to do that, but she thought I was too big of a chatty Cathy to be on the honor board. And so, and I appreciated that. She was honest, and that's a huge part of being on the honor board, right? Is listening and keeping all of that inside of you. But the fact that she said that to me in high school also made me think about myself, and I wanted to be different, and I wanted to be able to apply and have that opportunity in college.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Hamilton Academic Code and what it was like being on their honor board?
Yeah, so it's very similar to ours, and the code, is essentially about doing the right thing, about having academic integrity. Most of the cases that we heard were cases of students getting in a bind and doing something because they ran out of time or not intentionally doing it. So, I don't necessarily believe in bad people, but in nearly all cases, it became an opportunity to learn from the mistake and not be punitive. My senior year, as I think happens in most schools, the end of the year often becomes a busy time of year for honor code violations or for an honor board. And one of the more interesting cases was a student that had a pretty egregious plagiarism offense with a final paper in his senior year. And so it was brought directly to the honor board, and there were only there were only the senior representatives and myself because just seniors were on campus before graduation. And so the case was seen and heard, and the dean of students at the time, who I worked closely with, she couldn't shake the case, and she was really wrestling with it, and it was the student's first offense. But she took the night before we gave the family and the student the recommendation, and his parents had come to campus because they knew of the severe, his graduation could be in jeopardy. And the dean, I don't know if she went to home that night, but she racked her brain and racked her files and realized that this student, and I think systems just weren't as fluid at this time, that this student had changed his last name midway through college because his mother had remarried and he had a great relationship with his mom's new husband, and so he changed his last name. And so he had a prior offense in his Hamilton career, but it wasn't connected for whatever reason to his record. And so she brought us together that next morning to share that information, which was so disappointing because there's a process where you're asked, is this your first offense? So he actively lied because we didn't have that record. And it was really challenging because I was a senior about to successfully graduate, and we ultimately had to recommend that he not graduate. And he was ultimately given the opportunity to graduate if he did additional reflection work and completed the course that he would have failed because of the plagiarism. But it left a big mark on me in my last week of college before I went out into the real world about doing the right thing, even when people are looking, but you think nobody will figure it out, right?
Did you feel pressures being an honor board member, whether it's people trying to pry out information from you or just wanted to know more about the situation in college?
Yeah, so that same week, there were multiple cases that we were pulled for. And there was a student who I knew him socially, I would say. And he tried to find, and he had a minor, I can't remember the details, but it was a minor offense. It wasn't going to keep him from graduating. Yeah. But I think that fear was there. And we had made our recommendation, and we were waiting there was some space in between. I'm not that old, but 13 years is a long time to pass. And he had tried to pull me aside to influence my decision. And in the moment I was, able to say, we can't have this conversation. But it made me uncomfortable. And it made me see a different side of him, right? I think there was a lot of desperation there. Again, yeah. I don't think it was necessarily, I think he was doing whatever he could, right? But I see that happen in the admission process, right? And I think that one of the things that I struggle with is I really like relationships. I really like people. But there are times where I need to be careful, right? That people could be building a friendship with me for wrong reasons, right? And I really struggle with that. That's one of the hardest things that about my job, right? And so I try not to let it influence or keep me from making the connections that I should be making. But you can't ignore that, right?
Yeah.
Allows us to develop deeper understandings of others, and a better relationship in turn with others. So I think, one of the best parts about Pingree and the diversity from my perspective is that you as students have the ability to meet and interact and engage and have different perspectives shared all the time. And sometimes more than others, based on situations or groups. But I think as we share stories, we're able to learn about each other, right? If we can't travel to a place, or we can't travel back in time, we can read stories about that time or that place, and then be informed and have deeper connections. And I think fiction reading, at least for some, and Miss Chatterjee I know would agree with this, is a great way to relax and unwind, and to put yourself in someone else's head or experience. So that's why I love books and stories, because I think it's fun, but I think it's also interesting.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Brunhouse.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sean.
Mrs. Allison Brunhouse, class of 2000 and Director of Admissions. Thank you again so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you to Mrs. Brunhouse for interviewing with me. Next is Mrs. Schifano, who is my co-advisor with Mrs. Brunhouse for my freshman through junior year. She's still a part of our advisory in our hearts. Can you start with your name and your positions at Pingree?
Samantha Schifano, Director of Financial Aid and Assistant Director of Admission.
Fun fact, Mrs. Schifano was also my co-advisor for 3 years.
Yes. And now I'm advisor of freshmen.
But she's still a co-advisor in my heart.
Not the same as my other group.
She'll always be there in our hearts. What's it been like working as an admissions officer over the past couple of years?
It's been interesting. I mean, I definitely think, starting off, I did not come from a school. I do not come from, I don't think you don't go to school,
right.
You don't go to college to be an admission counselor. So coming in, it's definitely interesting to learn about the school, about the culture, and then kind of pass it down to the families and students who come in to interview and who really want to be a part of the community. So it's a great way to kind of get the head start, before the teachers and other students get to meet these families. And I think there's something to be said for getting to know all the families that come through the door. And while we can't offer admission to all of them, you really start to see who is the right fit and who might be better served elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. How do you see the honor code fitting into your role as an admissions officer?
It's a huge role. We start, so it's twofold, right? Mm-hmm. So it's how does it pertain to me in particular, but then how does it pertain to our families? And I think we start, we always have an honor code question on our application because it's such a huge part of our everyday life here at Pingree. We really want to know, how do the families feel about it? How is it incorporated into their everyday life before they even get here to Pingree? So we really want to see organically how families react to the honor code. We never have any negative experiences usually in the process. That's not to say it hasn't happened before, but for the most part, our families who are looking at Pingree already know about the honor code. And because it's already incorporated into their everyday life, it kind of flows naturally once they do get here. And then for myself, being an admission counselor, it's also being true to the process and making sure that I myself am acting honorably when I interview students and interview families, and not letting any biases come through and really getting to know the families for who they are.
Where do you see the honor code manifesting in the school? When you walk through the halls or if you ever visit classes?
So I haven't visited classes, I hate to admit. It's never been part of my job description, so right. I haven't done it. I probably should. Obviously, the biggest manifestation is the book bags that are all over the
right.
hallway. It's the one thing visitors notice, and we point out to visitors because it's just blatantly able to be like, kids leave their stuff in the hallways. and they don't need to worry about it. 6 hours later, the next day, if Mrs. Sinclair hasn't gotten to them yet, they're still there. It can be a little bit of a messy situation, and sometimes it bothers me that it's not clear in the hallways. But that being said, it's really nice that kids can put their stuff down and not worry about it. Not worry about their laptop being taken, not worry about, going to find their locker and putting stuff in a locker. And there's no locks on those even. In the middle school. But, you just don't have to worry about it. And so I think physically that's the most blatant observation of the honor code. But I also think just when you walk through the hallways and you see kids interacting, seniors with freshmen, and just even people who you don't think are a great friend group, but they're all acquaintances. And I think that in itself is because of the honor code. People are just nice to each other.
What else do you discuss in the admissions process that you think is also important, or in addition to the honor code?
We talk about right fit. So I think that's a really important right fit in community. So right fit is not just, there's a lot of times that we want it to be organic for the student to want to be here. There's definitely times where parents, try to steer their kids in certain directions. But we want to do what's best for the student. And so really making sure that it's the right fit for the student and also the right fit for us. We would hate to see a student get here and not enjoy it and not be able to utilize all the opportunities that are here because it's just not the right place for them. So I think throughout the process, and that's why it's such an extensive process, because we really are trying to get to know each and every kid that comes through our door, it's really important to make sure it's the right fit. And so I think that's something that we really pay attention to, and that will come out during the process just by getting to know the person and the family. And then community, you can definitely tell when a family wants to be here, wants to be a part of our community, wants to, be on campus and be involved. So that's also really important.
What is your favorite thing to talk about during an admissions event?
Well, can I say financial aid? Because that's what I
Sure.
talk about.
Yeah, of course.
No, I mean, I talk a lot about financial aid at all my admission events. That's my job. And I get to meet all the families that, will go through the process or not go through the process. I think it's not just about receiving financial aid. It's about knowing, the tuition costs and, the value that you're getting from a Pingree education, whether you are a full pay family or a full need family. It's about that value and what is Pingree giving to your student that you might not otherwise get elsewhere. So I think that's really important, and it's really great to be able to talk about it not from a money standpoint and a cash standpoint, but from the standpoint that you get to meet these teachers and you get to see they're mentoring your children and what you're really getting out of the experience. And what you're getting out within the year that you're there, the years that you're there, right? It's great to have the outcome at the end of the day when you graduate, but it's really the experience during your time here at Pingree that is so valuable. So I enjoy talking about that. And I always like getting the question of why, why I enjoy coming to work every day. And I think that's because I have an amazing group of people that I work with. Pingree on a whole as the school, the teachers, and the administration, but also my director and my colleagues, and the five of us on Basking Ridge campus, and then the 7 of us with our 2 colleagues down in Short Hills. We have a lot of fun together. So I think that's different for a lot of people. A lot of people don't enjoy going to work every day. So I'm lucky in that standpoint.
What's your favorite part of an admissions event? Because there's a lot that goes on.
My favorite part are the student panels. And I get to hear what the students have to say about Pingree. We never prep them. So it's really organic, and we ask questions and they'll answer, and they're honest and sometimes cringeworthy, but it's so true to themselves. and to Pingree. And I think it's a great way to get to know the school when you're visiting, but it's also, I enjoy it because we always have different kids. It's always great to hear the different experiences, and they're so truthful and honest. And that's something that's really important. And it's also really fun watching the kids go from, maybe 6th grade and then seeing them on a panel in freshman year, and then seeing them on another panel senior year, and watching them grow. And it's really amazing.
So when you're meeting with students, do you ever have that feeling where you can see the honor code embodied in them?
Yes. I think there are certain times when you're talking to a student, you really are able, not the way they present themselves, it's hard to put into words. I'm trying hard to explain it because it's almost like you need to be in the room for the interview. But the way they speak, and the way they speak about how they've lived their life, when you ask them questions about their school now and their friends and their teachers, when you get into their work ethic, it comes across very naturally when they truly kind of have the honor code ingrained in them without even knowing about the honor code, really. They live it not by our Pingree honor code, but however their family has raised them. And so you can tell. It's hard to put into words, but it definitely, when you're speaking to someone, no matter, what about, there's certain kids that you just know, okay, this kid is definitely, and you can even sometimes, when we speak about kids after we've met with them and we talk about them as an admission committee, there's definitely kids we even say, this kid would be great for the honor board. I see them getting involved with the honor board because it just comes across naturally with them.
Do you ever feel like there's something we'd need to be, or that you would like to see changed in the honor code?
Not that I would want to see changed, but I appreciate, I know every day, on tests and quizzes and the pledge you guys put on it. But I sometimes wonder, is there, and at the beginning of the year when we give back the honor code and we all sign it and the advisees bring it up on stage, I wonder if there's even more something we can do throughout the year to keep making sure it's not just a
once in a year kind of deal.
Yeah, it's not just once in a year kind of thing. It's not, and also not just like, oh yeah, every test and quiz I write it and it just becomes, second nature to do that, which second nature is good because hopefully that just becomes natural to live by the honor code, but also we want to celebrate it, right?
Right.
So I feel like sometimes I just wish there were more touch points during the year that celebrate the honor code, and remind kids that it's not just about, cheating, or sometimes those are, the things that are just kind of clear. There's so much more to it, and about being a good person. So I think sometimes I wish we could celebrate that a couple times throughout the year and let kids be reminded of why it's such an important part of school.
Well, I'm just about done with all my questions. Do you have any last things or stories you want to tell the listeners who may be listening, whether they're freshmen or seniors or even prospective families?
Well, I was thinking about this, and, I was actually thinking about it. I was thinking about the honor code, and when you asked me to do the podcast, and also in terms of, hearing about stuff and being involved in stuff here on campus, about kids making mistakes. And I think, there is always room for kids to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes. And this isn't, a black and white area. It is a very gray area, and there's different lessons to be learned from everything. So I think one of my biggest things is just knowing that there's room to grow, and we're a really welcoming community that really wants kids to flourish here and do the best that they can, but there's going to be stumbles and falls and mistakes made. And if you're true to yourself, though, and you truly value your character and working with others and being a good person, it all comes out positive in the end. And I think you're a better person for it. And I think the honor code helps you navigate this really, really tough time, right? I mean, high school's crazy.
Very crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I remember high school, and I don't envy you. So I think just knowing that, it's okay to take a little bit of a crooked path, but, stay true to yourself and let the honor code help you become the person that you're meant to be. And I think, if you want that and that's something that you value, Pingree is probably the best place for you to be.
Well, it certainly has for me.
Oh, good. I'm glad, Sean.
Well, that's about it.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being on. Mrs. Samantha Schifano, Assistant Director of Admissions, Director of Financial Aid. Mrs. Schifano, thank you again so much.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you to Mrs. Schifano for taking the time to speak with me. Both Mrs. Brunhouse and Mrs. Schifano's full interviews are available on YouTube if you'd like to hear more. For future episodes, please follow my updates on the Pingree Honor Board Facebook page or on the Morally Sound YouTube playlist.